Welcome to Har Meron. We're standing here right outside the place where our tradition tells us that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was buried. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, one of the 5 protege students of Rabbi Akiva, is the other Shimon we're going to talk about. We spoke about Shimon bar Kochva and the rebellion, the failed rebellion against the Romans. This is a later student of his, Shimon bar Yochai, and he is very important to the story of Lag BaOmer. And that is why to this very site, thousands of Jews come on the eve of Lag BaOmer. This place is going to be packed with thousands and thousands of people who are coming here to celebrate the Hilula of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the day that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai passed away on Lag BaOmer. And now to tell the story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, I'm going to take you to the ancient synagogue of the Jewish community here in Har Meron. Let's go. Welcome to the synagogue of Har Meron. This synagogue, which was destroyed towards the end of the year 300 something, but was part of a Jewish community that was functioning here from the time of the Second Temple. It's a thriving Jewish community here in Meron. So here, right by where Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was buried, here in Har Meron, this is where I'd like to tell the story of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. We're talking about the aftermath of the Bar Kochva revolt. An estimated 1 million Jews were killed in that revolt. It was a disaster. And understandably, the Jewish reaction towards the Romans wasn't such a favorable one. So there's a famous story which is brought in Shabbat Daf Lamed Gimel, which talks about Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Yehuda ben Gerim. 4 people were sitting and having a conversation, probably somewhere in the Galil, talking about the Romans. And Rabbi Shimon said everything that they built for themselves, bridges for taxing and so on. He didn't really have anything nice to say about the Romans. And so eventually, word got out to the authorities, probably Emperor Antoninus Pius. They put out a decree to kill Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon went and hid in the cave for 12 years. And that's the story we're going to get to later when we transport ourselves to Peki'in. But here the story of Rabbi Akiva goes as follows. Rabbi Akiva had an immense following. And this is brought in the Gemara in Yevamot, which says, based on Kohelet, "Baboker zra et zarecha vela'erev al tanach et yadecha, ki eincha yodea izeh yichshar, zeo zeo im shnehem." You don't know which harvest is going to be a good one. So keep on planting. Plant in the morning, plant in the evening. And based on this, Rabbi Akiva says, well, if you had children when you were young, have children later in life. If you had students when you were young, you should have students later in life. And this is where Chazal say about Rabbi Akiva that he had 12,000 zugot, couples of talmidim, chavrutot, who were learning together, basically 24,000 students. And you can imagine that everybody thought, this is it, this is the movement, the power is in the numbers, this is what's going to make the difference. And they all died out in this period of time between Pesach and Shavuot. Of course, Lag BaOmer is when they stopped dying, and that's when Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai died. But la'erev al tanach et yadecha, the students that Rabbi Akiva had later in life are actually the students that made the difference. Because as the Gemara says, Haya ha'olam shamem, the world was basically void and empty. There was no one to teach until Rabbi Akiva came to Rabboteinu Shabadarom, the rabbis in the south, and it's based on them that Torah was available to Am Yisrael. And so we see here in contrast with the earlier Shimon which we spoke about, Shimon bar Kochva, or Shimon ben Koziba, who had the masses and had the army and had the power, which ended up leading to a disaster. And then on the other side, we also have the many students, the masses, but they aren't the ones that succeeded. They were a failure. It's not necessarily in numbers and in power that we succeed. So there's something about these students which worked, something about the understanding that Rabbi Akiva had later in life that made it possible for Torah to succeed. And there is something unique about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in that aspect, and that has to do with the unique midah of midat hod, which is Kabbalistically the attribute of Lag BaOmer. It's hod, which has to do with expression. And after 12 years in the cave, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai finally came around to learning a lesson which makes the difference between him and the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. And that is a message which is intimately connected to Lag BaOmer. And the best way to talk about the story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's lessons after spending 12 years in a cave is, of course, to go to the cave. So let's go to the cave. Welcome to Peki'in. Peki'in in the Upper Galilee, a place where, according to some Jewish tradition, this is the cave where Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai hid. The story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is that he hid for 12 years in a cave with a carob tree in a spring. Well, here's a carob tree, and a little bit further down in the town is a spring, and so it fits the description. So let's go over the story so we can bring it back to the idea of Lag BaOmer. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai ends up being persecuted by the authorities for speaking badly about the Romans. And in the famous question, what have the Romans ever done for us? Well, they did it all for themselves. And so he ends up hiding in a cave with his son for 12 years. And after 12 years, he hears that the emperor has died, and so his decree is void, and so he comes out of the cave. And the story that we hear in the Gemara and Shabbat is that when they go out of the cave, they see people dealing with these mundane things such as plowing their fields and tending to worldly things. And after having spent 12 years in a cave, they sort of lost track of what that's like. They were so involved in learning Torah and the deep ideas and deep thoughts. And so they started basically destroying everything, looking at things and they would blow up. And basically Hashem told them, what did you come out of the cave to destroy my world? Go back to your cave. And so they went straight back into the cave. And after 12 more months, they realized, in the worst case scenario, if we would have had to go to hell, we would have spent only 12 months there. So in the worst case scenario, we should be out of hell by now. And so they leave the cave. Now, when they go out of the cave, the son, Rabbi Elazar, looks around and he starts getting really angry at what people are doing and trying to destroy it. And Rabbi Shimon would sort of undestroy it, or as we say, Control Z. He would undo everything that his son would destroy. And ends up that basically Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai has matured and understood something that his son yet didn't understand. And he was able to convey that to him with the following story. It's Friday, it's Erev Shabbat, and they see a Jew rushing from the field to the house, and he's holding 2 hadassim, 2 branches of myrtle. And they ask him, what is this for? And he says, well, it's for Shabbat. So why do you need 2? And he said, what do you mean? 1 for Shamol and 1 for Zachol. So Rabbi Shimon says to his son, you see, look how much these people care about Torah and mitzvot. There's more than one way to fulfill Torah and mitzvot. It's not only about learning Torah all day, it's also about how I live it in my daily life, and how in the small things in life, I make them beautiful and make Torah part of my world and part of my life. And that's when Rabbi Elazar really understood that, the 2 of us can do what we're doing, and the rest of the world is okay doing what they're doing. They don't all have to do it our way. And that is a very important point. This is really the main point of Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer Kabbalistically has the attribute of Hod, which has to do with glory, with the essence of something shining forth and making itself known to the world. It's about potential bursting forth and showing itself what it can be, and people appreciating that. And that is really what is being appreciated here on Lag BaOmer with Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Where Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, as we know, if we speak about Kabbalah, everyone talks about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. There's of course the question of who wrote the Zohar. Some attribute it to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, but the Zohar talks a lot about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai deals with the deep meaning of Torah, what we call Kabbalah, what we talk about the secrets. But the idea of Hod, which is really the midah this day of Lag BaOmer, Hod Shebehod, is about those ideas, the potential that's the inside of something expressing itself and bursting out for the world to see. And that is the idea which we saw with that Jew with the 2 hadassim, expressing how he cares about Torah, how he cares about Shabbat, how he cares about mitzvot, and celebrating that in his own way. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai realized at that moment and was able to show his son that there are many different ways that we can express ourselves, but they are all part of this idea of expression, and there's so many different ways in which it can be expressed. And this brings full circle the difficulty with the earlier students of Rabbi Akiva, because the earlier students of Rabbi Akiva all had to have it, each one in their way. I did it my way. And they didn't treat each other with respect. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came to appreciate the uniqueness of every single person in the unique way that they express things, and to try to find a room for everyone else to fit. And so that is the idea of Lag BaOmer, where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the later student of Rabbi Akiva, is able to complete that process which Rabbi Akiva started with the earlier students, and with a different mode of operating with Shimon Bar Kochva, trying to fight and to bring the Geulah by force, and to make things happen, and to finally to transition into the work on the internal and on how that expresses itself in the world. And that's what we celebrate on Lag BaOmer with bonfires, because fire is the inner potential, the energy of something bursting into flame, and for everyone to see and for everyone to enjoy. Lag BaOmer Sameach.